active pattern, including severe weather that will start late tomorrow evening and unfortunately be an issue through Saturday. How deep into Saturday remains still a bit of a question, but unfortunately this looks like the potential for an outbreak of severe weather in our region. The thinking is that some of these thunderstorms could produce not just tornadoes, but perhaps strong tornadoes before this is all said and done. And I highly encourage you to perhaps share this with some folks that you might know that may or may not be paying attention to what the weather looks like this weekend. This is the kind of forecast when we're looking ahead where some folks are probably going to need to cancel some plans. Just simply put, that's probably what needs to happen. Unfortunately, this kind of setup is one of them that is what I would say is pretty typical of our severe weather setups here across the southern United States. So that is obviously an issue that we do have. Here is our severe weather risk for tomorrow night. It begins the process tomorrow night. You can just kind of see sort of at the top of the screen there that the level 4 risk has been extended closer to our region. We have high confidence in severe weather, including damaging winds and tornadoes occurring back to the north of us. A lesser amount of confidence in our area tomorrow night. Despite the fact that it is not high confidence doesn't mean it's not high impact, because unfortunately the time of night and the way the atmosphere is structured is such that we do anticipate that we will probably see, if tornadoes can form, strong tornadoes, a possibility of that as well. Give me a moment here while I get my phone up for a second so I can share what we're talking about here on the WTVA News and weather Facebook feeds. I would encourage you to, of course, share as well, simply because this is one we got to pay attention to. And I would say best case scenario, I know there's some haters, we don't have a lot of haters, but we do have a few haters out there that occasionally want to be like, I hope those haters have something to say on Sunday. I hope that we have overdone this by Sunday. Let's just say that if we have overdone this by Sunday, that I'm going to be happy, because that means we haven't underdone it. Because this is the kind of event I just don't want to underdo. So give me a moment here while I share this on our WTVA weather Facebook page, and then we will dig a lot more into where we go from there. And that should be good. Okay? So this is the first threat tomorrow night. And then the more significant threat that we've kind of shown all day long that exists for Saturday. And it might not be instantly obvious. This is the fairly large level 4 out of 5 risk that we show there. And anytime we have a large risk like this, it leaves an opportunity for a greater risk area in the middle to be issued. We do think that that is a possibility that we end up with one of those, simply because of the opportunity. This, as we always say, that graphic up there is math. And so the more opportunities you have for severe weather, the more math you'll have. And again, I appreciate Kimmy there for that. And thank you so much for supporting everything that we do here. Appreciate that, Kimmy. So let's talk about this. It is multiple opportunities. While this says Saturday, what this is referencing is after dawn Saturday. And so the initial graphic is before dawn, the second graphic is after dawn. We're just going to have a lot of thunderstorms, and we have all of the wrong components in place, all the right components, depending on your perspective, to produce damaging tornadoes, unfortunately. So before I go any further, there's 2 things that actually need to happen here. Thing number 1 is that you need to make sure you know how you're going to find out if you're in the danger zone. WTVA's weather call should be on that list of things. It's the thing that I have from my family, from myself. I take those weather calls on the air from time to time. It is a personalized tornado warning. That's thing 1. You need something like this, or if I make that go away for a moment, we should have another graphic in here that says armor. You want to make sure that you have multiple ways to find out if you're in the danger zone. So weather call, obviously, I believe is the best of those ways. The code red alerts that many boards of supervisors put money toward that cover a lot of us. You should have that as well. I would say even if you have weather calls, just if your phones all blow up at the same time, you know something's going on, right? So think multiple layers of protection here. NOAA Weather Radio, Code Red, the FEMA app, and the WTVA Weather app, all options, but you need to. This is the number 1 thing, and that's why I'm saying this before we go to anything else. The number 1 thing you can do is make sure you know that you're in the danger zone. And tomorrow night in particular, there is a threat while a lot of us are sleeping, and nighttime tornadoes end up being the most deadly just because you can't see them coming. Okay? we'll talk about Holly Springs. We'll talk about all these different locations here in a minute on how this threat plays out. That's thing number one. Thing number two that you could and should do is know where local storm shelters are. And so here's just kind of a rough plotting. Appreciate Craig, who is a graduate of Mississippi State doctoral program, for putting these together. He went around and took our list that we have at WTVA.com, augmented that to a certain extent, and put together a graphic that shows area storm shelters. But I say that to say that if you don't have a good storm shelter that you think is sturdy enough, we do have a complete list at WTVA.com. And you can snap a picture of this, just snap a screenshot, and after we're done, tap on that QR code. It will give you the listed out locations where all of these storm shelters are. Those are the two things. If you know when to go and you know where to go, what we do is important. Don't get me wrong. But those two things are what you can do to keep you and your family safe. Everything else we do is important, it's informative, but I can't pull you to shelter. You have to make that decision. And the cases of, someone says need more in Monroe County, need more in a lot of other locations as well, unfortunately. We need more shelters, and hopefully someday that will be something that happens. That person mentioned there's 2 in the Greenwood Springs Splunge area. Hopefully those are depicted there on that graphic. Okay, now that we've mentioned those things, when to go, that's where weather call comes in, code red, all those different things, and then where to go. That's where the storm shelter list comes in. Now let's start talking about things. First and foremost, we had some thunderstorms producing some hail earlier today. Atmosphere showing us that it is engaged and unfortunately ready to play. We're looking back toward the west at a very large long wave storm system that's coming toward us that will bring this active and severe weather as it moves closer to and into our area. One couple ways we'll show this. First way I want to show this is kind of with the jet stream aloft there, and it'll take it a moment for it to kind of populate in the data, but we have a very strong dip in the jet stream. That's what that big dip you see right there is back to the west, and this trough is going to kick through, and the winds aloft are strong enough that strong tornadoes could form if we can get them to form. Check, are you having trouble? Someone said they had a hard time hearing me. Let me know if Patricia is not the only one. We'll see what we can do. I can bump up the audio a little bit more. I just don't want to go too high on that. Give me a moment. See, I do have, give me a second here. We'll try that. Check. I'll go up just a little louder. Hopefully that's not too loud. Hopefully that's a little better. Okay, and appreciate WONA for getting in there and talking about kind of some of the things related to this as well. So, big system, strong system. You're really low. Was that any better now? Okay, better. Okay, good. Okay, well, I will keep it there. We'll do that. So, let's go ahead and kind of break down how this kind of plays out. First and foremost, obviously, what better part of the next 24 hours is going to be relatively fine. That storm system getting more organized back west of us. But as you can see, clouds will be the main thing that we see over the better part of the next 24 hours. Between now and tomorrow, at this time, not a lot. The active weather is going to be out here for locations toward Missouri. I'm not going to get into exact spots because the meteorologists up there know a lot better than I do. So I don't want to claim that I'm an expert there. I'm not, just like they're not an expert here. Our projections, and we're still looking at some of the latest here coming in, and some of our highest resolution projections coming in right now. So I can show you some of them. I can't show you others. I bought a trampoline. Will it pick it up? Yes, it will. So you'll notice tomorrow night, we get in this time frame here close to about 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning. Some of these individual storms that are showing up there, some of these are going to be rotating and potentially tornado-producing thunderstorms. This projection, most of our projections, I think, underdoing the intensity of these storms just a little bit, unfortunately. So that unfortunately kind of casts this idea that maybe things won't be as bad as they could potentially be. But what Storm Tracker definitely does show is it still has a few here, and it has them closer to, say, south of Macon, Meridian. Those just as easily could be a county or two farther north where they're at, but some rotating and potentially tornado-producing thunderstorms overnight. A lot of our projections predicting at least a few of those there, and then a widespread batch of thunderstorms. This is 8 o'clock in the morning. There's enough shear that these could try to produce tornadoes even that early in the day. And this initial flare-up of thunderstorms eats into some of the fuel, producing some rotation, trying to produce a couple isolated tornadoes. And so as we go into the afternoon, though, you'll notice the atmosphere just immediately just pops back. And that is one of the things that looks significant about this setup, is the ability for the atmosphere to overcome a big flare-up of thunderstorms. We're always looking for something to pray for here. One of the things we're looking to pray for is perhaps that initial batch of thunderstorms uses up all the moisture. I don't know that it's going to be the case, but hopefully that is. Hopefully that is. Let me see if I can pop it one more level up on the audio, and hopefully that's not too loud now. So significant potential there for tornadoes in this afternoon setup. As you can see, individual thunderstorms, rotating thunderstorms, tornado-producing thunderstorms on a fairly widespread scale. I mean, if I'm just going 3 o'clock here, let's just take only the northern half of the state, right? Everything north of Jackson. And again, this is one model at one time. Locations will be different as we get closer, so keep that in mind. But you know, I'm going what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Rotating thunderstorms. Now, will there be 11 tornadoes at that point? Probably not. Highly unlikely. But could there be 2 at that exact time? Yeah. 3? Not impossible. So rather than look at, oh, well, we're fine in Macon, or we're awful in Tupelo, that's not the point of what we're seeing on this graphic. The point of what we're seeing on this graphic here is that you need to understand that this has a high potential to produce tornadoes and a potential to produce strong tornadoes. Now, I don't, again, think that we're going to have 10, 11 rotating tornado-producing thunderstorms at the same time. But that is to say that this is a very volatile atmosphere, unfortunately. And so you'll notice from that 3 to 4 to 5 o'clock, they do congeal a little bit, but a lot of those, still have that rotation sort of look to them even into that point in time there. So unfortunately, all signs point to a very active Saturday and a more active than it looks pre-dawn Saturday. Again, not all our projections are out to that point in time. I do want to show you one that is at least partially out. Give me a moment to get it pulled up here. And part of what we're looking at here, you and I are going to look at the exact same time as I'm trying to, get this to kind of populate all the stuff in, okay? So tomorrow, see, not much in the morning. This does show a few more thunderstorms in the afternoon and evening than what that last one I showed you a moment ago did. Now, these do struggle a little bit to get strong to severe, but there's, let me kick this over to make sure we're looking composite reflectivity. We're looking at base reflectivity. Give me a moment to change this to composite, and I'll make them look a little bit worse. Let's go back a couple hours there. So yeah, it's not impossible tomorrow evening to have a few of these that are trying to produce tornadoes. As we go into tomorrow night, as you can see, 11:30, midnight or so. See, that's the concern. That's what we talked about at 5 and 6 o'clock. We did not think that projections were doing a good enough job modeling this overnight round. There's a better potential on this overnight round. Let's see, we're 1 o'clock in the morning Saturday. This is late tomorrow night. This is where the Friday night on that graphic we keep talking about comes in, where it's Friday night. Technically, it's Friday night, but it's during the 24 hours that makes up Saturday. So that's where, again, this initial threat with its lower confidence level comes in. Unfortunately, that's 2 o'clock in the morning. What does that look like to you? That looks like a line of supercell rotating thunderstorms to me. We will have a better idea on that storm rotation coming up at 10 o'clock on the TVA 9 News as that information continues to come in. But as you can see, that overnight flare-up of thunderstorms will have a potential with tornadoes with it. We will have staffing here at the TV station. Our meteorologist Chelsea Simmons will be in. We'll have John DeLusick. We'll have different people in at different times. I'm going to prepare you right now to know that there's a possibility I'm not in for part of what happens tomorrow night. And the reason for that is an expectation of what's coming on Saturday. So we're going to be monitoring this. We will have it well staffed, and they'll call me in as necessary. But they're just full honesty right here, right now, that that there's a possibility that I'm not in for some of what happens overnight tomorrow night because we have to save up for what happens on Saturday. That's not to diminish what happens tomorrow night, but that is to say that with such a sustained threat there, that we have to be as on top of this as possible, okay? And so then that shows those thunderstorms kind of moving out with additional thunderstorms redeveloping 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. How far east do those develop? let's go back here. This is the current run, the latest run here, what we call the 0Z. I'm going to force this to go back to 18Z yesterday, which would be the midday time period, so we can compare the difference. And this is a little bit farther east, perhaps. A little bit farther east, perhaps, than what it showed. It is farther east. And so how that plays out remains a question. But you'll note here that we still see widespread storm development by late morning to midday on Saturday. And you don't have to be a meteorologist to check the shape of these storms and say that doesn't look good. There's a lot of storms up here. And there is a hope that perhaps the most significant moisture gets cut off. In saying that, though, I mean, if we're playing that circle game, which is what we did at about 1:30, 2 o'clock before, playing the circle game on here again, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10, maybe something up north there. Two main models there, both showing similar thing. Early afternoon, widespread potential for damaging winds and tornadoes, perhaps strong to violent tornadoes. So that's part of the reason why, again, just making sure that we're all on the same page here. There's a possibility I'm not in all night tomorrow night, because when that happens, hopefully that doesn't happen. But we're preparing that it can, where this means our coverage, if this is the case, could be different than it usually is. You know how we get in and we drill in and we're on your storm and we're there with every second? We're going to have to jump around if that happens. And again, things could change. But the unfortunate thing is that I'm not high confidence that our projections are going to look a whole lot more rosy once we get into this. As we look at the fuel for thunderstorms, you can see that we had some out there this evening. And what may be less obvious here is that there's fairly widespread fuel tomorrow afternoon, but we lack the specific lifting mechanism there that really truly gets these going. But you can see how we're fighting. The black here is what we call SIN. On the top, it's convective inhibition, tries to keep storms from going. All the oranges and yellows, convective available potential energy, basically fuel. And there's significant fuel there. And so you can see even overnight, this shows a fairly uncapped significant fuel situation, unfortunately. So yeah, that's not a good situation. And then we go into the day on your Saturday. I mean, and you'll note down there south of Jackson, if you're just looking at the color, that's about as bright white yellow as we get on the top of our scale there. Extreme levels of fuel available for thunderstorms to feed off of and work off of and possibly strengthen and produce tornadoes off of. So not a good sign, just to say the least. So all of that to say, I'd say there's a high potential that we're going to see tornadoes around the region and that it ends up being a significant event. Now, Jennifer, just a second ago there on Facebook, mentioning storm of the century. Let's talk about this for a second here. I have two children, Leo and Penny. They are both smart, but in completely different ways. More smart and savvy, more book smart, able to decipher certain things, different types of smart. And so when we talk about this, this is what a tornado setup looks like in Mississippi and Alabama. It looks like this. So is this going to be like X day or Y day? Is it going to be? Those comparisons aren't useful because it's just like comparing one child to another. They're both your children. They both have the similarities of what the parent is. And in this case, the parent is a tornado outbreak in the southeast. This looks like what one of those looks like. Is it going to be like 2011? Is it going to be like 2014? Is it going to be? None of that matters, because the reality is that each of those are a child of what a tornado outbreak in the southeast looks like. And so the parent is tornado outbreak in the southeast. Some of those days I mentioned are historic, once every 40 years sort of days, right? So I don't think it's productive for us to do a comparison there. But what should be said is that we go years without seeing a setup as strong as what Saturday looks like. And that means that strong and violent tornadoes are a possibility in excess of EF3 in strength, possibly EF4 or greater. Absolutely on the table with this setup, unfortunately. And because of the multiple opportunities, remember I was circling a minute ago there? That's part of the reason I feel a fairly high confidence level that if it doesn't happen tonight, it'll happen by the time it gets here. When we look at that severe risk area and you see that level 4 out of 5, again, this is math. And so at the top there, I kind of always circle this or put a box around it. That comes down to the amount of reports. The fact that we have such a great opportunity to see severe weather over that time period is the reason why I expect probably an upgrade to that risk level by the time we're there. So I do think that unfortunately this has the potential for to be an outbreak of severe weather across our region. And I said this before and I'll say this again. I said this at the top. I pray nothing more substantially that by the time we talk or you talk to somebody at church on Sunday, you're like, that Lapon kid blew it out of proportion. That would make me feel excellent if we got this situation that we were able to step back and say, Matt blew it out of proportion. But we can't prepare like that. We kind of have to prepare like this could be a really big day. And you need to be changing those Saturday plans. You need to be planning. Someone mentioned a moment ago if it was a whiskey or a beer day. All joking aside, what it is it's potentially a plan to hang out at somebody's house sort of day. Because, when we start talking about, I'm going to go back to, again, that severe risk graphic again. And I'll pop up, our tornado safe place rules that we always show when we're doing our coverage there. If you're looking around where you anticipate you'll be on Saturday and it's not a sturdy structure, we've got to be someplace stronger, okay? That means someplace that has a small windowless room where you can wrap up in blankets, pillows, put a helmet, stay there, all that stuff. But we need to be within steps of that reinforced area. And so that means that we just have to avoid those unsafe places. Cars, trucks, and mobile homes. In particular, when we talk about mobile homes, we're talking about the foundation, and that's the issue. It's not how the walls are constructed. It's not how the roof is constructed. It's the fact that air can get under them and flip them. And let's be clear about one other thing here, that tie downs on a mobile home are only so effective. They're only as effective as what it is that's tying them down is, right? So if the straps, the metal straps that are tying down those mobile homes are more than a few years old, things rust in Mississippi. They weaken, they fatigue. And that's where, a slab foundation, you put a mobile home on a slab foundation, you're probably in okay shape. But with the kind of storms we're talking about here, I want to be near a storm shelter if I can, because we're talking about the potential for strong and potentially violent tornadoes, unfortunately, with this setup. This has the potential to be one of those dates that we recall in the future. So with that in mind, the last thing I'll say about this is that it's never safe to be in a manufactured home, especially one that's not on a solid foundation during a tornado. And solid foundation is up for debate to a certain extent, but we want to make sure that we are in a reinforced structure. And listen, I'm not saying that a regular stick-built house will be strong enough in some cases. We need to be in a reinforced structure if we can, with the potential for high-end tornadoes here. You're 20 times more likely to die if your mobile home is hit by a tornado than if you're in a conventional home with a slab foundation or other structures. So that is just a statistical fact of our state, unfortunately. And that's not picking on anything, but that is to say that we prepare ahead now. So if necessary, we will live stream on KZ103 and 95.1 The Farm. Both those have a footprint that's up here closer to the TV station than some other locations, but just keep that in mind as a way to stay in contact. If you'll give me a moment here, I'm gonna kind of look back through some of your questions here. Kenneth mentions not our first rodeo here, calm down. And I would say it is unproductive to get super duper worried about this. I know, it's funny that after everything I've just said, but that doesn't necessarily do us any good. If this is something you have storm anxiety with, what we do with that anxiety at this moment is we plan. We feed facts. We feed anxiety facts, and the reality comes to the forefront. So here are the facts. Number one, there is a tornado threat. It's significant for strong tornadoes, okay? So what facts do we feed into that to overcome the anxiety? We make a plan, right? As soon as I'm done with this, call grandma, cousin George, a friend, and start making plans on where you will be on Saturday in particular. Now, obviously, the overnight hours leading into Saturday, there is a threat there, and I would not spend that overnight period in a manufactured home leading into Saturday. I just wouldn't. You can debate which foundations, whatever. I'm not picking on anything. I am saying that a strong tornado potential exists overnight leading into Saturday as well. The confidence in that increases during the day Saturday through midday through the early afternoon. So there's plenty of reason to be planning ahead on where we will spend that time. And planning ahead now is how we overcome some of that anxiety. Because once you have a plan, you know where you're going to go. And when the time comes, you execute that plan. You go there. Now, we don't need to be driving across town because, again, the number one most unsafe place. And the reason it's at the top of my list here are cars and trucks. Vehicles are the easiest to roll. And someone mentioned they have storm anxiety because of April 2011. Absolutely, I get it. That's not unwarranted. That was a severe weather outbreak, a very significant high-end severe weather outbreak. We have the potential for significant violent tornadoes with this one as well. Will it be on that level? That's for historians and all of us to look back for. That doesn't prep us. So again, how do we fight the anxiety? Number one, knowing where to go. And number two, knowing we need to go. And I appreciate you watching our live streams, but make sure you have weather call, code red, all those things I mentioned before. I'm going to pop that up again because those are the two things that you have to remember. If you know where to go and you know when to go, you're going to be fine. Just make those plans, okay? So I'm going to leave you kind of with this here. Kitty mentioning that she's scared, I have kids, and to do it on your own. That's why we, on Thursday night here, are making a plan for tomorrow night and making a plan for during the day Saturday. And if we plan and we're prepared, then we enact that plan. But you still have time to plan, okay? So as I go back to this graphic, what I don't want you to do, it's very, very easy to look at this graphic and say, well, I'm over here in Grenada and Oxford and Corinth, I'm fine. The lines here are much more fuzzy than this indicates. And I have projections that still, as you saw a minute ago, have significant tornado-producing thunderstorms in the orange section as well. This is about math. There's more chances down here and less chances up here, but that doesn't mean that this is stronger down here and weaker up here. That's not the case. It could be just as strong anywhere. There's just more opportunity down here. And you could argue kind of at the northwest edge of this, there might be the greatest opportunity for strong. So all of that to say, I am sorry for any anxiety this brings you. And hopefully on Sunday at church, we can all look back and say, Matt was way too worried about this. If that were to be the case, how could this go wrong? We call that failure modes. What are the failure modes? How could this not come about the way we expect, right? Going back to that precipitation, and then I'm going to have to kind of shut this down so I can get a clearer and more concise forecast put together for our 10 o'clock broadcast. Going back to that precipitation and the timing and all that kind of stuff. This overnight stuff, it's possible we're too capped, meaning there's too difficult to get these tall storms to develop. That is the thing we hope for. But ultimately, and that an inversion typically develops at night. This particular projection we'll call the HRRR does not have much of an inversion at all during the night. I think that it is very reasonable then that we get some of these overnight thunderstorms into pre-dawn hours of early Saturday morning that could produce tornadoes. But we're hoping that perhaps things are too capped. That's the thing we pray for, right? Then, as we go into Saturday, if you're looking again at the way things don't go as we plan, as we expect, would be if we just have so many storms that perhaps we don't have enough moisture to kind of come back in and really flood its way back into the area. Perhaps perhaps that's the way. So perhaps we just have too many storms and not enough space between them for them to really, really get focused and produce as strong a tornado. That's my second thing I'm praying for. Unfortunately, the strong winds aloft are there. The surface moisture, which has been fleeting from time to time, is there with this. And so both those things, unfortunately, lend themselves to this becoming a potential outbreak of severe weather around our region. I'm going to see if I can, I bet there's going to probably be a few more text messages in that conversation going on with our kids back at home. So with that in mind, let's go ahead. I'm going to mute that for a second here. We'll pray, and we will get ready for the 10 o'clock show. Here's what I'm going to be looking at for 10, just so you know. I'm going to be looking ahead at 10 o'clock at the rotation tracks on these, how they compare, where they're the most likely. Obviously, we expect the changes in that to be significant over the next 24 hours as we get closer. So at 10 o'clock, it might show it directly over top of Tupelo, and tomorrow morning it's over Amory, tomorrow afternoon it's over Columbus, tomorrow evening it's back into over Grenada. So those are going to move, the exact tracks of the rotation tracks. We're going to show them, but that doesn't change the preparation. We all, if you're watching this in Mississippi now, need to be preparing for a very active day of severe weather on Saturday, from well before dawn into after dark. Okay? Let's pray real fast. God, I'm human and I make mistakes. Help me to have overblown this. God, I don't care if they trust me after this because they think I'm overdoing this. That's obviously I want them to trust, but the reality is that I want them to be safe. So just allow this to not be as bad as we think it could be. Help people to make wise choices, make plans now. And God, I know that there are a lot of people that are anxious about what this could mean, what this could be from what they've seen in the past, what they've gone through. And God, I pray that you just eliminate that anxiety and to a certain extent turn that into motion that helps them to prepare and make wise choices. Because we know that there's no such thing as if it's my time, but instead that you give us ears to hear, eyes to see, legs that move, to do and follow and use the wisdom and guidance you give us. And so allow us to take those steps, not to stand in incoming traffic, but instead to walk to the other side of the street and to prepare ahead and plan ahead so that we can be safe as possible, so that we're not regretting decisions we could have made on Sunday. God, help me to say everything I need to say in a concise way. And on a very personal note that maybe affects them, God, help whatever this post-nasal drip is that I have that's starting to develop to not take my voice when the time comes. That would be excellent. But God, I know your will be done, and just protect these people. Pray that in Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so 10 o'clock, thing I'm looking for how close together the guidance is on all these projections, where the rotation tracks are, where the rotating storms are most likely. And you're probably going to hear me harp quite a bit on weather call and on the, what's the word I'm looking for? And on the map of places to hide, not places to hide, storm shelters. There we go. Because those are the two things you can do. All the rest of this is in his hands, right? But you and I can find out where to shelter and when to shelter and do those things. You don't even need me, by the way, when it comes to that. If you have weather call, when that warning is issued by the good folks at the National Weather Service that, thank God, still have jobs, then those weather calls go out and you know you need to go where you need to go. And by the way, this is a scenario where we need those folks at the Weather Service because as good as we are at tracking these, if you have 2 or 3 of these rotating thunderstorms at once, you need as many sets of eyes as possible on those. And so a day like Saturday is a day where the folks at the National Weather Service save countless lives. So thoughts and prayers with those folks and all the hard work they put in this time of uncertainty for them. Okay? We will see you guys at 10 o'clock. Be safe, be smart, and we'll talk to you soon.